Lately, I feel like everything I read goes into my brain and then as soon as I'm done, poof, it goes out again. I'll read the best book of my life or something with a little less impact, and either way, within a few weeks or months, I don't remember anything about it. And while I'm not sure if this is a bad thing or just completely neutral, I knew that when a friend told me she was frustrated with the experience, I had to find out more.
I'm not even halfway through. Like I'm just reading it the way that you are, just one at a time, trying to absorb. Like I already forgot everything. So I'm terrible with books. I just read and then it's like out of my mind. And you should make a video about that.
So here's the plan. I'm going to figure out why we forget so much of what we read and try out some strategies to see if I can remember what I've read just a little bit more. Imagine a book you read and remember from school. If you can't remember a book from school, pick something you read a few years ago and you do remember. I'll wait. Okay, why do you think you remember it? You probably have some ideas, but let me tell you, it's not because it was a particularly good book, or you were smarter at the time of reading, or your brain just randomly decided to remember that one. The reason you remember the book, or at least parts of it, is because you reinforced your memory of it. Your average reading experience probably consists of casually reading a book, finishing that book, and then putting it down and reading something else, or watching something, or just doing something else. When you do this, you rapidly start to forget what you've read because your brain is quite literally filtering it out. This is called the forgetting curve. This happens with pretty much everything because your brain simply can't hold that much information, so it filters it away, and sometimes within the space of minutes. Unless you do something to disrupt it. While you were at school, this disruption happened while studying the book, talking about the book with your classmates or your teacher, and writing essays about the book. These activities, while they might have been absolute torture, will have reinforced that memory in your mind. With more recent books that you remember outside of school settings, you likely did things afterwards that reinforce that memory too. You may not remember every single little detail about the books that you read back then, but you can probably recall the major plot points or lessons you learnt while reading. These types of things are the things that you can recall from your memory. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not Sherlock Holmes, believe it or not. I don't have a vast mind palace I can draw upon at a moment's notice. Mine is more like a mind cottage filled only with things from the past few years. And the thing about this forgetting curve is that it doesn't stop. Your brain will keep filtering as time goes on. So we can't outrun it, we can't really determine if we'll forget things fully or remember them in little details if we want to. We can only do our best. There's a reason why when I did my Read 30 Books in 30 Days challenge back in 2021, I don't remember a thing I read. Not a thing, because I was stuffing my brain full of an endless supply of information every single day, and the only thing my brain could possibly do with it all was to filter it away completely. I can only tell you what I read in one of these books. What a waste. And that voice memo I shared earlier, my friend was talking about this book. She bought the same one for me as a gift, and not only is she struggling to remember what she's read in there, I am too. But does this really matter? I think it does and it doesn't. If I'm reading a non-fiction book, I probably want to learn something and retain that information. If I retain nothing, that feels like, now I'm thinking about it, a little pointless. If I'm reading fiction, sometimes I want to remember what I read so I can recommend it to others, or recall the story so I can think back fondly on it. But other times, I just want to read and enjoy the book for what it is at the time of reading. It doesn't really matter if I remember the details or not. After learning about the forgetting curve though, I am a little annoyed, because I know that a whole host of books that I've read over the years and gained value from at the time of reading are gone from memory. So I'd like to do something about that. Let's try a few things out. Earlier, I asked you to think of a book you remember from school. I also mentioned that there were likely a number of things you did at that time to solidify the book in your memory, at least a little bit. Those were studying the book, talking about the book, and writing essays about the book. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not really planning on suddenly getting back into the world of education, so let's think of each of these things as something that's possible for an adult. For studying the book, you could write notes in a notepad or annotate inside the book. This will help you get your thoughts down on the book, but on its own, it isn't enough. The next two things are the ones that will actually solidify it in your memory. Talking about the book is even better. When you're teaching someone else about what you've learned, you're recalling your memory as you explain, and by doing so, you're solidifying it in your mind. This could be done by talking about the book face to face with someone or discussing it on an online forum or something. Ideally, though, it works best face to face. Lastly, writing about the book. I'm definitely not going to suggest that you start writing essays on the books you read. I know that's pretty unrealistic. However, there is real value in writing about what you've read. But you have to do it in a specific way. When you recall something from your memory and then write it down, you're disrupting the forgetting process and solidifying the memory in your mind. Doing this, though, isn't just a case of writing a review of the book. I don't know about you, but that's not really helped me to recall books in the past. Instead, doing things like writing down the main ideas and themes within the book in your own words without looking at your notes or the book. You need to be recalling from your memory for this. Or writing how you would describe the book to a friend. That will do the trick. If you really want to remember what you read though, and in the case for me and this book, the best way to do it is write detailed essays and then actually implement what you've learned. Okie dokie. Let's put this to a little test with an experiment. I've been reading the book How Not to Write a Novel, and I've also been making notes as I go. But I'm already forgetting what I read, and if I'm honest, I've already forgotten what I've written down. We're going to do a little experiment in terms of using all the stuff I just talked about, and we're going to test them all out. I'm going to consider this already the study phase that I've already done because I've already written notes. So let's see if I can force my brain to retain some of the stuff that's in here by using the other stages in the thing I just showed you. As I said, I've already done the notes, so the first step is the essay step, or for me, writing about the book. I'm going to write in here a description of what the book is about, and then I'm going to try and recall without looking at my notes or the book some of the key points that I took away or I remember right now from the book, and I'm going to write them down as if I'm talking to a friend. Let's try. Okay, so that went okay. I wrote about a page and a little bit. I kind of wrote about what the book is about in general, and then I picked out some key things that I took away from the book. But those things that I wrote down that I took away, there are only three things that I can remember, and I know I wrote pages of notes as I was reading the book. And two of those things were in the later stages of the book, like not from the first section, which means I have forgotten even stuff that I've written down as notes. It's completely gone. Even the act of writing down something as a note is not enough. So even though I've only picked out like 3 or 4 things from this essay that I've written, now I'm going to do the next stage, which is then talking about it with someone. And at this point in the day, after I'm usually done filming, me and my husband make coffee together, or let's be real, he makes the coffee. So I think that's probably the perfect opportunity to tell him about the book I've been reading, and hopefully that will solidify it in my mind even more. So let's go. So I'm reading a book called How Not to Write a Novel. And typically they said that bad writing does that by the character looking in the mirror. To do that and not use like extra words like he pontificated or whatever. Pontificated. I don't know what that means. So yeah, so I probably missed a bunch of stuff that I'd written down in notes, but those are the ones that stuck out to me, I guess. Okie dokie. I think that went well. It's hard to tell because I only really had time to talk about a couple of the points in the book, and the coffee machine was kind of loud, so it was hard to focus. But I did manage to give a general outline of what the book is about, and also a few very specific points that really stuck with me while reading it and taking notes. But I know for a fact that I wrote way more notes on other things that I could not recall even after writing the essay on the book. I feel like that probably is going to work in terms of, solidifying the memory in my mind, but it might be more effective to do it after each section of the book, to then write about that section and then talk about it, and then read the next section and then do it for each one. Because if you do it right after you've read the entire book, unless it's fiction, I think it's going to be way harder to retain as much information as you might want to, because I'm halfway through that book and I could only focus on a couple of the points in like a couple sections. So what I'm going to do now is see if in a couple of days I have retained that information that I wrote about, that I did notes on, and that I talked about. We're going to see in a couple of days if that stuck in my mind or not, or if it's just fizzled out. And then we'll see if this whole experiment actually worked or not. So I'll see you then.
3 days later.
Okay, so it has been about 3 days and I wanted to come back here and see if those 3 things that I wrote down and I talked to my husband about had solidified in my mind or not. And the good news is that yes, they did. So what I've done before setting up the camera to film is just try and recall those 3 points and the things that I wrote about to see if I could remember them without any prompting, without any looking at notes or anything like that. And yes, I can. Now that doesn't mean that for a longer period of time, say a week or even a month, I might still remember those things, because I would have to do a longer experiment for that. But after a few days, normally I would completely forget everything. And as I said earlier, some of the early notes that I wrote, I don't remember those at all. So to use this as an experiment, I think really works, but there are a few things that I would do differently next time. If I were to start this whole thing again, I would begin at the beginning of the book and I would write notes on how to not write a novel for the first section of the book. And then I would write an essay on that section, and then I would talk about it, and then I would read the next section. That way I could solidify that information in my mind before moving on to the next section. Because although I have remembered certain points after doing this experiment, there was a reason why I didn't remember some of the early stuff, because I had written notes on it, but I hadn't done anything other than that. I had just written notes and I couldn't remember what those notes were. Whereas if you broke it up into different sections of the book, you give your mind the ability to actually grasp hold of those things through doing the techniques that I did earlier. I think one of the other important aspects of this whole thing is to put into practice the things that you've learned if you're doing something that's non-fiction. Anyway, this wouldn't apply to fiction, it wouldn't apply to all non-fiction, but if it's something that you're learning in practice, so for me it's, writing, or if it's a personal development thing or something for work or whatever it is, and you want to learn something to better your life or a hobby or something you enjoy doing, then actually after these 3 stages, notes, essay, talking about it, putting it into practice is the next step. And I think that would solidify it even more, because you have made it then part of your life, something that you have experienced. And for me, for these writing techniques, okay, sure, I have remembered what they are, but when I put them into practice, then it just becomes ingrained, something that I learn from something, but I've actually put it into practice, and that's probably one of the most important things. So there we have it. There is a way to remember what you learn. It might take extra work, but it means that these things will stick in your mind for as long as you can possibly keep them there until you put them to use or talk about them or share them with friends, whatever it is you want to do, because you want to retain that information. But I would love to know from you, and so would Berlin. Do you have any other techniques you use to remember what you read, or are you just not bothered about remembering any of it anyway? I would love to know, so leave me a comment and we will see you next time for another video.